Welcome to Anna Dialogue. Today we are going to take a look at a different solution to amplify our phono cartridges, especially moving coil cartridges. Are you ready? There's also going to be a test and a comparison. Let's dive in now. Okay guys, first of all, I want to underline how I fully support the fact of using, I said this recently in a video, 15 nuggets of audiophile wisdom. Here is a link. You're going to find all the links I mentioned in the video description here below, where I underlined the fact that step amplification, meaning amplify the signal a little bit, pass to another component, amplify it a little more, and so on, is usually better than a one-shot amplification like an integrated amplifier. So, for example, the prince of examples, the best example is actually the one dedicated to vinyl, to turntables, to cartridges, to phono preamps, because the signal comes from our cartridge and usually it goes in a hopefully dedicated phono preamp. There are excellent phono stages integrated in a preamplifier or inside a integrated amplifier. But I think it's always a good idea to separate dedicated components. I know it takes room, but the quality pays off. So turning back to the chain of the signal, coming directly from our cartridge, the signal goes usually in a phono preamp, then a preamplifier, then a power amplifier, and then our speakers. Now, a lot of people, I must say it's a trend almost now, are going back, because it ain't anything new, are going back to use a step-up transformer, SUT or SUT, as many say, including me. And these are a solution, a passive solution that you put immediately for the signal to amplify the signal coming out from your phono cartridge, moving coil, to amplify the signal and then send it after that to your phono preamplifier, okay? And I must admit that I am using this solution with great satisfaction. It is paramount though, it is paramount, I want to underline it a lot of times, that the step-up transformer must be perfectly matched in terms of impedance to the cartridge, okay? Because otherwise, if there's a mismatch, it ain't gonna work. The sound is not gonna be good. In fact, a lot of times there are specific, like in my case, SUT designs for specific cartridges. And that makes a lot of sense. In any case, here today instead we are going to focus to a different solution, an active solution, not a passive solution like SUTs. And what are these? These are called head amplifiers. You don't hear them that much. I mean, currently very few production houses, manufacturers are making them. And I must admit that roaming around the web, I was searching for an example because I wanted to test it. I must admit I had never tested one. I only found, sorry to say, medium quality stuff, which could have been a choice in the end, but I know, I mean, comparing that, I'm the excellent step-up transformer that I'm using, plus the phono preamp, which I'm going to speak of both in a sec, I just thought it was more correct to do this test to find a very high quality piece of gear. And you have to go back in time because you ain't gonna find them. So at the end, what did I choose? In the end, I have chosen the Accuphase C-17. Oh baby! By many considered the best head amp out there ever made. Don't know about that, but it's an incredible piece of technology, absolutely, as we're gonna see afterwards. There's also a more cheap model, if you want to explore. I want to mention that now, the C7. And actually, Accuphase apparently believes a lot in this philosophy, amplification process. Still has not a fully dedicated head amp, but it has the C57, which is a phono preamp, but it also integrates head amps inside, okay? So very, very cool, absolutely. Okay, now that's like a $15,000 piece of equipment, insane. The C-17 that we're gonna take a look today was first released in 1984, so we are absolutely in the vintage domain, more than 40 years old. Okay, so then why choose a head amp? Because, as we all know, the rule, usually a lot of people claim, and I understand that active components have a more soft footprint. They are less invasive, they change less the signal, while instead active, meaning that there is current, that there is something ongoing connected to a power socket in the wall, does have a difference. And so what is the main reason to choose a head amp? Well, first of all, I would say a good amount of gain, okay? You can really get a lot of gain in contrast with the SUTs, which usually are not that much, but it depends. There are incredible things out there. But usually we could say that a head amp has a lot of gain, and at the same time, it is extremely silent. Now, this is something fundamental for a lot of people who are going crazy with hums, okay? If you have a head amp, if you configure it in the right way, it's gonna be dead silent, especially the Accuphases. Wow. And even distortion is much lower, and they declare, and I believe it, I mean, why not? The linearity of the signal is fully achieved. I mean, also the extremes, the very low frequencies and the very high frequencies are perfectly reproduced. And as you know, Accuphase is conservative on all its specs and all its features. Okay, so let's try to understand what are these features of this baby. Okay, so now you're going to see some images of this amazing piece of gear. Very nice color, this champagne color, typical of the 80s and but mainly 90s actually, but Accuphase always had this role, at least for a very long time. And as you can see, we have three main selections in the front for the impedance matching. So we have 10, 30, or 100 ohms, which isn't a lot, okay? There are other types that have even more types of loading. So I must admit that we are not having the optimal amount of features, of selections of load in this sense. But it covers a vast majority of cartridges, absolutely. While on the gain side, you can choose between 26 or 32 dB. And the 32 dB really boosts the signal a lot. I mean, when I did the test, I had to greatly lower everything and compared to the other types. It was so huge that the burst of sound at that point was amazing. Okay, so apart from these features, very high quality, all the components, the chassis, the connectors behind, the buttons, as you can imagine, Accuphase top notch. This is clearly a solid state design, and it is composed by a cascade push-pull circuit. Fully dual mono, meaning that the engineers wanted to completely isolate every part of the signal path in order to avoid any kind of noise, of interference between the two channels. So not only the amplifiers are fully isolated, I mean, even physically isolated one from the other, but also they have each channel has a dedicated power transformer, which is also very, very nice. And as you can see, the capacitors and all the different parts are extremely high quality. Wow. Okay, so the best way to understand is to listen, clearly. As you know me. A lot of people always write me, but how did you get away putting music in your videos? I don't get away. I just give up monetization. Okay, guys? I always write this in the comments. Sometimes I think it's useful to say it on video because people don't understand that I think this is important. And I want to give the maximum to you, not just talking about it, but giving you the possibility to listen. In fact, as always, all the tracks are going to be for download in high res. I'm going to do some rips, 24-bit, 96 kilohertz, here below in the video description, okay? But even here, you're going to have, I think, an idea. So what is the test? Let's call it blind test, since I'm not going to tell you which is which until the end. We're going to listen to, clearly, the head amp, the Accuphase, but we're also going to listen to my step-up transformer, which is the Auditorium 23T2, which is fully dedicated to the features, the characteristics of the EMT TSD, the superfine line MC cartridge by EMT. A fantastic cartridge, which paired with this SUT just blossoms, absolutely. And I've been using this for a few years now, actually. Together with this, also the third track is going to be played simply by my phono preamp, which is the Luxman EQ500. I just a few weeks ago did a dedicated video. If you want to know more about the Luxman, here is a link. Once again, you're going to find them all here below. Okay. Our track is also going to be a recommendation because you know me. It's important for me. I have this fantastic Tone Poet release that just came out. I was waiting for this Blue Serge by Serge Chaloff. Clearly, I'm butchering the names. You know me, I'm Italian, so I always have difficulties in the pronunciation of names. In any case, this is the message, okay? This is an incredible sounding, fantastic type of record, which clearly the Tone Poet treatment delivered it in a perfect way. And I actually, as I said, I was waiting for this because I had it on CD. Very good sounding CD, not compressed CD, fantastic. And now finally we have a decent release on vinyl. Wow. So we're going to listen to the beginning of the first track, A Handful of Stars, where you can really hear the saxophone of Serge and all the plucket of the different buttons and how he's blowing inside the horn and all the piano, the drums. Fantastic. I mean, it's just an incredible album. Pause the video and go and get a copy if you don't have it. Before proceeding, I forgot to mention that in this case, I had to do a perceived loudness normalization because otherwise there was too much of difference between one and the other, clearly. All perceived loudness was normalized to minus 19 LUFS. As you know, in my opinion, when you do that, you degrade the signal, okay? You degrade the audio. And in fact, in my opinion, when listening back to these tracks with my headphones, I heard less differences than what I was listening live. And I did a lot of live sessions with these for months with all of them, okay? So I know exactly how they sound and what is the strong points of each component. And in fact, after the revelation, I will finally give you also some information on my take. Okay, at the end, I will tell you which is which. Just a short snippet of each one. Let's go. Okay, guys. Now I'm going to tell you which is which. Pause the video if you don't want. Okay. Track number 1 was the Luxman. Track number 2 was the SUT. And track number 3 was the Accuphase, the head amp. Okay. Write in your comments, possibly before knowing what is your guess, just to see what people are saying. Be honest. Otherwise, it's not relevant. I think it's fun and it's also interesting. It's useful to see what you write down. And now I will finally give you my opinion on these. Clearly also based on what I have listened for months, once again. So please bear in mind that my experience is always going to be different from yours, much more in depth. Now, in my opinion, at least with this cartridge, okay, I don't want to go on other ones. Let's say this one, because I used it for a lot of time in the last months. I think that the best sounding, let's start from that, of the 3 is without any doubt the step-up transformer. Yes. The sound is more natural. And I find that the bass note is much more deep and controlled. More deep, let's say, than the Accuphase. And also the sound stage of the SUT is just better. There's more air in between the instruments, in the ambient where the players are playing their instruments. It's just, I think, rather immediate. And unfortunately, I find this restriction connected to solid-state technology. Even though it's top-notch, I think that a passive step-up transformer lets the rest of the gear, which is tube gear, maybe I should have said this before in my live listening, is just free to express itself. So yes, actually different kinds of preamplifiers, solid state and a tube, but mainly I would say tube amplification. But not only, a lot of stuff has to come out on the channel. I've been testing a lot of stuff. So actually I was using both, but I always turn back to my tube gear, which I prefer in the end, ultimately. So I must admit that these are the main characteristics that I picked up. The Luxman is the last position, even though it doesn't, I mean, inside Luxman, there are 2 step-up transformers. So actually, it's almost a comparison to a different step-up transformer, if you think about it. In any case, it's a component less along the chain. So let's say it does make sense in the end. And what else? As I said before, the SUT, in most cases, will probably going to win, but it has to be a perfect match. And it's not simple. It's not simple, okay? So keeping this in mind, and also the silentness of the signal of the head amp, if you choose a head amp, in the end, a lot of times, maybe it could be a wise solution, even better than a step-up transformer, because it's so hard to match them for the impedance, for the construction, that a lot of times, once again, I think it's better just to find a more simple solution as the head amp. Or at least it's good to know that it exists if you're going crazy to find the right solution, the right amount of gain, or hum and problems and things like that. Okay guys, I hope this video was helpful. Please leave your comments if you have tried other head amps. I'm very curious about that. Thank you again for watching, and remember that music is born analog. I want to show you the baby next to me. Oh, here we go. Bye!
Hey there, if you are enjoying my content, please consider to subscribe. It's free, and it will help the channel tremendously. Also, don't forget to explore my prior videos. There's something for everyone.
Welcome to the audiophile community.